today I will be talking about the Maratha art and architecture. And now the Maratha term is understood here in a more expansive term, not limited to certain caste or a geographical region of the present day political Maharashtra. I would like to take you back in the history a bit and give you the background of the happenings of Maharashtra from in 16th, 17th, and 18th century, which actually underlines the present talk. Um, we know that history of Maharashtra, essentially medieval Maharashtra, circles around Shivaji Maharaj a bit, and but the uh, understanding of the various dynasties that rule before Shivaji Maharaj also is a very it plays an important role in our understanding of the landscape and the kind of influences it brought down to Maharashtra. Later, then we shall go down to Peshwas and other Maratha Sardars and the confederacy that was formed in 18th century. So I would start with certain maps. If you go back to the early medieval period, say around 13th century or so, we see that Yadavas is one of the major dynasties ruling the Dakhan or the central Maharashtra and the area around Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and so on. And we have dynasties like Shilaharas ruling the coastal Konkan and so on. Um, but a very important event that happens around the end of the 13th century is where we see Alauddin Khilji coming down to the Deccan and conquering a large part of territories of what we know as peninsular India, where he captures the Daulatabad, the Devgiri, Daulatabad is named after, which was the capital of Yadavas, and not stopping at Daulatabad, he extends the territory right up to the northern Karnataka and so on. After Khilji's advent in Deccan, we see that subsequently Sultanate and Tughlaqs ascending to Deccan and occupying a primary position as rulers, political rulers in this area. But this again doesn't last for long, and just within 100 years or so, we see that the regional dynasty called Bahmanis, with the founder Hassan Gangu Bahmani rising in the Deccan Peninsula, in south, and this has laid foundation of the medieval art and architecture, especially the military art and architecture in those times in and around Maharashtra. Uh, Bahmanis, along with the other Shahis, are also known to have attacked Vijayanagara, the kingdom, the Hampi that we know of, and which leads to the end of the Vijayanagara kingdom, which was ruling down south.
You
Uh,
know, I think the
Hello,
slides are moving. Do you want to
slides
take?
are not moving. Oh, actually, they're moving for me. Maybe I hope you can see the
Yeah,
entire slide now. Hmm.
absolutely, we can. Can.
So we were looking at the background of Deccan history, and I was showing certain maps. So here is a map from 13th century where Yadavas are ruling a major part of Maharashtra in 13th century, and I was talking about how Alauddin Khilji has come down to Deccan, peninsular India, and conquered a major part of Maharashtra. And then we see the rise of Bahmani dynasty, which was responsible for bringing down the Vijayanagara kingdom at Hampi.
Mhm.
Um, and then again we see that there are factions of Bahmanis dispersing and forming their own small kingdoms, regional kingdoms, which is where see the rise of five Shahis, which are Adil Shahi, Nizam Shahi, Qutub Shahi, Barid Shahi, and Imad Shahi, all originating around 1490s or so, and having their capitals in peninsular India at different places such as Bijapur, Hyderabad, and so on. Uh, and then we come down to the first half of 16th 17th century, where see the rise of Shivaji Maharaj. We see that Shivaji Maharaj has inherited his own Watan or Jahagir from his father Shahaji Raje, who was serving Nizam Shahi first, and then later he switched to Mughals and Adil Shahi based on and his switching was based on a very opportunistic behavior. His Jahagir was on the borders of Adil Shahi and Mughals, and there was a lot of wars that were fought over the territory and over the dominances in this region. And ultimately, you see that he has been given a punishment posting down in Bangalore and later at Tanjore, where he shifts. But then, when Shivaji Maharaj comes down to Pune to look after the Jahagir, we see that his aspiration to establish his own kingdom under the name of Swaraj triggers, and then he is seen challenging the Adil Shahi dynasty as well as the Mughals during entire his lifetime. And entire of 17th century we see is where and the Maharashtra is engaged in constant war and battles all over the place. So this actually this kind of scenario did not lead to any peaceful situation where art and architecture would flourish and so on. And the kind of organization that we see at local level is kind of listed in this slide here I have presented. At village level we see that Patil, Kulkarnis, Deshpande, etc. Are the administrators as well as the bookkeepers who are ruling the at village level. Then we also see many feudatories or the feudal lords which are rising, who are Mirazdars, or who are Kamavizdars, or who are Jahagirdars, who are building their own small fortified bases, which are not essentially forts but small castle-like fortified bases, and providing the private troops and armies to the bigger powers, the regional powers like such as Adil Shahi or Shivaji Maharaj and so on. Looking at the digressing nature of these kind of tax-paying Kamavisdars and the feudal lords, Shivaji Maharaj was not favorable to giving any further watans or giving any further jahagirs which are passed on hereditarily. So he instituted a system where salaries were paid to many of the tax collectors and so on. And he made sure that there are no smaller power centers that are formed all over his territory. And we could have seen that this system would have continued further. He always thought that this sort of power center, smaller power center, would challenge the Swaraj that he was trying to set up. And hence he has discouraged, and that is very well written, clearly written in the Ajna Patra and the Rajya Vyavahar Kosh that we see, which were commissioned during Shivaji Maharaj's times. But then later, when we see that Aurangzeb descends to south to Deccan after death of Shivaji Maharaj, we see that the things are much more dire, and Shivaji Maharaj's son Sambhaji as well as Raja Ram have to again hand out watans and jahagirs and promises of the smaller power centers all over Maharashtra, to make sure that the land stays with Marathas for long. And there we see this feudal families coming back again in the form of Jahagirdars, Watandars, Inamdars, and so many of them were from Maratha caste, who were traditionally the was a warrior caste here. But during the early 18th century, we also see the Brahmins and even nomadic castes like Dhangars getting to the battlefield and fighting shoulder to shoulder with Marathas in order to defend the Maratha territory. Uh, and all these traditionally Maratha families who were in Maharashtra since the time of Bahmanis, they already had made their bases, which continued in 18th century because the Vatan system was reinstated. Now we see that a major political change come at the very start of 18th century, where Aurangzeb dies in 1707. But before that, we see that when Aurangzeb has come down to Deccan, he has confiscated a large part of Shivaji Maharaj's territory, and he also managed to imprison Shahu, the son of Sambhaji Maharaj, the grandson of Shivaji Maharaj, and his Sambhaji Maharaj's wife Yesubai, who was taken to Delhi that time. This was a major hindrance in continuing with the Swaraj that Shivaji Maharaj had established. So it was very pertinent for many of the Maratha Sardars to bring back the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, and this happens when Aurangzeb dies. So when Aurangzeb dies, we have a very interesting person coming from Konkan, Balaji Vishwanath Bhatt, uh, who belonged to Konkan area. Uh, he playing the part of diplomat and making sure that the Chhatrapati Shahu, the descendant of Bhosla family, comes down to south and again takes back the kingdom. Uh, for the successful diplomacy that Balaji Vishwanath Bhatt performs, he is also given the very heart of Maratha kingdom, Pune and Supe Jahangir, as Vatan, and as a prize for his work. We also see that when Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj is released, he also makes an unwritten promise to Mughals that the Maratha kingdom will after that time not rebel against Delhi Mughals. So in future, in 18th century, most the role that we see that the Maratha Sardars perform is mainly as a protector of the Delhi throne, where the Mughal emperor is protected by the Maratha Sardars in various capacities. Um but there are these restrictions of not ruling the Delhi or not rebelling against Delhi, we see that the Maratha Sardars have take up the activity of expanding the two and half district kingdom that Shivaji Maharaj has established as Swaraj, and we see them expanding the Maratha kingdom beyond the boundaries of present-day Maharashtra. One of the prominent commanders that comes on the scene is first Bajirao Peshwa. Here you can see the only contemporary portrait that we have of Bajirao Peshwa, though belonging to a Brahmin caste, the son of Balaji Vishwanath Peshwa. He takes the battle from the forts of Maharashtra to the battlefields in the plain areas in north as well as in south, even fighting with the contemporaries like Nizams of Hyderabad and so on. So here again, as we see the major activities about expanding the border, so very uh, uh, less time of his life is actually engaged in doing something on ground, except for building a very small part of Wada, which later became Shaniwar Wada. There is not much public service work that we see taken up by Bajirao as such, but his son, Nana Sahib Peshwa or Balaji Bajirao, is the one which we see under whom the urban development happens in the Peshwa period. So Nana Sahib Peshwa is honorifically called as the medieval architect of urban Pune, where he brings in various communities from Rajasthan, from Gujarat, from Andhra Pradesh, from Karnataka, and settles them in Pune. Pune is never been a manufacturer's market. It has always been a retailer's market, but he makes sure that various traders comes and settles in Maharashtra. That and he systematically undertakes the development in and around Maharashtra during that time under the aegis of Shahu Maharaj. Shahu Maharaj, though was released and he settles at Satara and occupies the Chhatrapati throne, but he had always been performed his role in the advisory as an advisory rather than taking an active role active part in the day-to-day working of Maratha Empire during 18th century. So under him we see various sardars performing, and one of the central sardars is the Peshwas here. So here I would like to again highlight the map where we see the small empire, small kingdom of Shivaji Maharaj expanding to almost two-thirds of the entire Indian territory, right up to the Attock in near Afghanistan, where the Maratha commanders have gone and conquered the territory. Either they have stayed and ruled those areas, or they have managed to get lot of taxes in the form of khandani back from these places, and in that sense indirectly have a great dominance over these territories. So that involves, we have Gwalior, Sindhyas in Gwalior. It involves the Gaikwads in Baroda. We also have Bhoslas of Nagpur. We have Holkars of Indore, and even the Tanjavur seat of the Venkoji is again forms a part of Maratha Empire as such. Um, and that money inflow in Maharashtrian territories and with all these people actually gives rise to the renovation and rebuilding activities during those times. And one of the major focus of this renovation is related to the family gods of many of the sardars and the family towns that they come from. They have also concentrated on development of many pilgrim centers like Trambakeshwar, Pandharpur, and so on. And we see a increase in the activity undertaken by those hey. I've just given the names of various different families that are in different areas. So here, as I said, we have Shindes, Gaikwads, Holkars in the larger part of India. Then in Pune itself, we have various sardars managing Pune. In later times, we see a rise of many Deshastha and Konkanastha Brahmins like Rastes, Mehendres, Fadnis coming down from Konkan and occupying territories in Vai, Menavli, Pune, Satara, and so on. So let me get to the Maratha art and architecture. So initially, many of the experts who have been studying art and architecture have classified it as an vernacular style. But vernacular style word or a native style or a local style doesn't do it as justice, because we can identify unique characters that we see in the expression form and material language of Maratha art and architecture. We see that they have been frequently and repetitively used, and these aspects combine the element from the various influences they bring back to the land as well as the native influences. And we see a continued evolved tradition of development for many of these forms, material manifestations of those times. And the use of distinct material is also seen in Maratha art and architecture. So here I also define various political centers in terms of the political centers, the religious centers, and trade centers, where you see the expression of Maratha art and architecture. And this almost extends from the post Yadava period to early 19th century. That's the period that we are looking at in this presentation. um, I will further go to the scope. What sort of material expression do we see? Now, here I would now get down to the actual forms that we see, which I have divided into different types. So, forts is a very common form that you see, which actually starts at the very beginning around 16th, 17th century onwards, and which is more talked about. Actually, one would require an entire different lecture to talk about the military art and architecture that is seen during Maratha times, whether it is done by Shivaji or later times the Peshwas and so on. In this presentation, I would more talk about the urban expressions like Vadas mansions, woodwork, stucco work, stone sculptures, Maratha murals, Maratha miniature paintings, portraits, very interesting examples of urban town planning, riverfront developments and water systems, temples, chhatris and precincts, and pilgrim site development, and so on. So this is just to give an example of the kind of forts and fortification that happens around 18th century. So this is this kind of gateways that you see at a fort Lohagarh, which is near Lonavala, was built by Nana Fadnes. And so here you see the climax form of fortification that can happen in Maratha territory when it comes to forts. Later, as I said, the battle and the war movement moved to the battlefields in the north and the plainer region. So there, then we do not see a much any exclusive or very characteristic development of the forts of 18th century, like later part of 18th century. So let's talk about the very vadas and mansions. Now, I would also like to familiarize you with various terms related to the vadas. Here, vada is a modular architecture. Now, many of the regional architecture, right from Harappan times in Indian subcontinent, have been modular in nature, and they have very prominent courtyards in the center with the buildings around it. In Maharashtra, this kind of architecture is an is multiplication of a unit called khan, which is the distance between two pillars, and the khan which is at the corner is called safe khan. So, if you kind of extrapolate this plan, you get this kind of architecture where you have see single line, which is called ghai. If it is two line, it is called dughai. If there are three lines of such pillars, it is called tighai. And this sort of kind of gets expanded over the time. And as I said, because there was a great inflow of surplus money, we see many of the sardars expanding their very modest dwelling to more royal palatial structures. But again, the central element was this sauk and this gahi patterns that you see. And typical wada that you see in Maratha architecture looks like this, where you have different courtyards, and based on the courtyards you describe how many chauki wada it is: पांच chauki, teen chauki, saha chauki wada, and so on. uh, like in many of the medieval structures, you see as you enter the building, the space kind of becomes more and more private and personal as you go inside. So the any entry of the guest would be contained in the initial part of the vada, where you have the formal verandas, the guard rooms, the offices. We also have places like negotiation rooms when there are some political discussions to be taken place. Then we have reception areas, living rooms, which are where we have mainly the male or the male folks dominating the scene. And as you go inside, we have the older people staying in the middle, which is called Masghar, and so on. We also have the sacred spaces like Devghar and all, and even the Pothichi Kholi, the manuscript room, which is placed in the central area in center of the Vada. And as you go at the end, we have more personal spaces where you have the kitchen, where you have the dwellings of the women, where you have the place where there is a room for a pregnant woman like Balantinichi Kholi, and so on. And at the end, you have the toilets and the cow shed and the servant quarters and so on. So this essentially is an element of a typical Vada, uh, as you say. And based on the usage of that courtyard, the names of the different chowks are given, like Fadacha Chowk. Fada is like the officer. Fad is the office where you have the office chowk here, and the Khasgicha chowk, which is a private chowk, is at the back here. So this is a kind of cross section that you see, where you see that wooden pillars with a talkhada base, making the bare structure, and the walls are later covered between the two pillars using brickwork, and so on. The major material that is used in 18th century or even earlier for the dwelling spaces is not stone but the brick. And this is a very typical which is brick which is called Pustaki wheat or Peshwai wheat in these parts of the areas. This is also called Lakhori wheat in Lakhori brick in the northern parts of India, and we see beautiful facades and patterns that are made using these bricks. Sometimes we see application of this very interesting molded bricks that are seen to decorate the facades of the vadas, and very characteristic mahirapi kaman or the cust arch is used to decorate the facades as seen here. You can see that the three primary colors of white, black, and red ochre are utilized for the decoration here. This is a typical vada. This is a one from Menavli, and here you see that the entry of the vada is generally marked by uh, a, d- uh, um, a gateway with a drum house on the top, where there is a chaughada or the drums that are played to mark the different hours of the day. Um, and Sometimes it is also protected by small walls and bastions, as you see here. These are the examples of few gateways. Now I'll be showing you the examples of different elements of Maratha architecture. So these are all from various parts of Maharashtra itself. At certain places you also see the use of Dakhni arch, as it's seen here. This is from Chas Kaman. This is the maternal place of Nana Sahib Peshwa near Pune. Similarly, here this is a Kadam Vada in Satara at a place called Sap. Again, you see the interesting drum house on the top, and we see the brick bastions with a stone at the base. Some are very colorful and utilize lot of wooden elements, as seen here. This is the northern parts of Maharashtra in Nandurbar and so on. And we see that the typologies use different material in combination. The base is generally the dress stone, which is mainly the basalt. We have very few vadas in lateritic stone in Konkan, and then we have brick structures with lime stucco, lime work on the top, and the wooden work for the windows. These are the kind of different doors that you come across. The doors of the fortified castles or the gadis generally have these kind of spikes on the top, which are to prevent the elephants banging on them and so on. Uh, so this is a recently restored Vishram Bagwada in Pune, where you can see very interesting brickwork done. And these are the interior courtyards that you see across. You can make out that the wooden elements are very common, and that also kind of risked many of these vadas to the fire. And we have many incidences in the history of vadas where the vada is burned down at multiple points of history. This is one of the very large, expansive vada at Saswad, which is near Pune. It is called. It was owned by Purandare. We were one of the prominent Sardars, and this is the place where Bajirao actually spent his childhood. And we see that many of the influences of Shaniwar Vada comes from these kind of structures, and you. And the pillars also, we can see different typologies of pillars. Some are rectangular here, while in certain cases where you have to entertain the guest, you have more decorations in wood and so on. These are some of the other pillar typologies that you come across. You can see that the arches are not put into use to a great degree. Mostly it is a modular construction that is seen, and the capitals are heavily decorated with different motifs, like kalasha. There are floral motifs. There are different animals which are depicted here, like snakes and birds and so on. uh, these kind of pillars that you see are called surudar khamb, which means cypress like pillars, which again is a North Indian influence that you see in many of the vadas during this period. uh, and you see the kind of capitals. Now these are quite different from what you see in Rajasthan, Gujarat, where you have couples or beautiful birds like parrots, etc., depicted. Here it's more horizontal in nature and more rounded in shapes and so on. We also see that Maratha architecture has used local terms to denote something that comes from Islamic Indo-Islamic influences and Indo-Islamic architecture. So something like a floral design is called belful, and so on. Here we see different types of cusp arches that are employed, um, and we see great degree of variation both in stone, brick, and wood here. You can see that there is a carving of Garuda and Hanuman, which is marking the entry of a holy space. Again, the windows which allow you different degree of opening are seen here. The modest ones are rectangular like these, but so you see some very ornate ones which are covered by mural paintings with kalam dance and so on, like these ones. And how do the windows open? So you see that the bigger openings are in the courtyards because these are inward looking spaces, whereas in the outer areas are generally closed shut in order to prevent the heat coming and heat and dust coming from the road. So these are very inward looking and climate controlled architecture that one comes across here. Instead of the angan like spaces, you have more courtyards in this. The various sloping roofs mainly use the tiles. Now we have many Mangalorean tiles, but in those times we see what we call as Narichi Khapra, which are more rounded in shape, and sometimes they are flatter like these ones as seen, which kind of are entangled into one another. Some of the vadas of the northern Maharashtra are kind of scale up the architecture where you see better use of the wooden structures here, and they also served the bigger courtyards here served as darbars for many sardars like rastes or danis and fadkes and so on. Even the Holkar Wada at Chandwad, if you visit near Nasik, is quite big. And the more intimate courtyards are like these ones, where you entertain people. There are some fountains which are placed and so on. They are also utilized for family functions like munja or some private functions like doha jevan and so on. Here you can see the courtyards in the back are used for dining, washing, cleaning, as seen here. These are from Vai Menavli near Satara. And you can see the spaces around courtyard between the rooms are the semi-open spaces. These are again utilized sometimes as library spaces or places to for devghar and keeping manuscripts and so on. The more ornate ones, like the one seen here, is from Fulton. Now, Fulton is a place where Nimbalkars, one of the relations of Shivaji Maharaj, reside, and they were one of the major feudal lords in that area. And you can see the profuse use of this glass handis, which is used to light this divan khanas, the surudar kham, which are quintessential Marathi here, and the cusp starch and lot of woodwork all around. You can see the different kind of beds that are seen here, the jhulas, the partitions which are done with paintings and woodwork again, and very beautiful niches are made with custards decorated. Sometimes they're utilized to as shelves. Sometimes they are utilized to draw various paintings and so on. All the staircases in these vadas are within two walls or within and allowing the walls are actually very thick, which and the staircases are within the wall and they are not in the exteriors. So they are generally very dark, only allowing the shaft of some lights coming in at strategic places to guide you through the route. We also see many the Tulsi Vrindavan in the courtyards. The other thing that you see very prominent in all this vada is the devghar, the puja rooms, and these are very elaborate puja rooms with like sometimes 30, 40 different gods, idols or vigrahas placed here. Uh, and one can gauge the sectarian affiliation of the family based on these sometimes, and are very well preserved in certain places. And now, because of the modular structure and because of the specific material, we do not see many high storied buildings during those times. So the anecdote goes that the Shaniwar Wada itself was 7 story tall, but we know that based on the base stones of the pillars at the ground level, it cannot really go that high. It might be 4 or 5 story top, and only certain towers might rise for 1 or 2 stories to give you this kind of vantage points or towers. So this is one from Chandwad again, and this is from Nipani in near Belgaum. The now m- During Peshwai times, we see this tribal kind of construction which borrows from Yadav period structure, where who do not know arches and domes, while they also borrow from the domes profusely and build these kind of internal ceilings which allow for a large space without pillars. So these are the two architectural technologies that are utilized almost equally throughout 18th century in building both the sacred spaces and the secular or profane spaces. I'll and many of these vadas sometimes hold this beautiful galleries or balconies jutting out, which are called saud or meghadambari. Megh means of course the clouds, and this is like a space in clouds which you can use as a vantage point, and that are seen in many of the vadas. This is from Pune, Vishrambag Vada. And courtyards against the ones which are decorated and used for entertaining guests have these kind of fountains which were irrigated using the Neher kind of systems that I'll be talking about in later period. We see different kind of fountains, like the one here is called Hazari Karanja, which had almost more than 900 spouts. We see the ones which are carved in stone, like these ones. This is Chiman Bagh in Shaniwar Wada, and these are some really very interesting mandapa like structures that you see. This is a Vahan mandapa, and yet a fountain at a place called Dhum. These are some of another other essential elements you see. You see this banana flower bud that is used at the end of the custard, which is decorated. You see this is a stylized 100 petal lotus that you see on many of the vadas. This again, as I mentioned before, is a bel patra design, bel fulachi nakshi it is called, which is element from the Islamic architecture. And similar niches are decorated, colored, and geometric patterns are utilized, and sometimes this sort of foliage patterns are seen all around. I'll go to the woodwork. We have very less work, scholarly work based on this. Only Dr. M.S. Mate has worked a bit on Maratha woodwork, where he looked at various woodwork in Nasik and elsewhere. That's one monograph that we have about this work. But this kind of seamless floral designs is called Takta Poshi. It gives you an impression of seamless design, but actually these are small discs which are joined at the strategic locations and hidden by this creeping pattern here, the creeper pattern. So these are again very modular in nature. These are some profusely decorated wooden vadas. This is at a place in Nagar called Parshikar Vada. Some very interesting windows that we come across. Uh, Woodwork. This is from Vijay Durga in Konkan again. Some interesting animal forms that are seen. This is almost like a makar or a dragon-like form. Ganesh patti or a decorative uh, 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 decorative plate kind of design is seen, which actually borrows from the temple architecture. We have lintel on the door jambs, so these door jambs are copied and used in vadas in many places. uh, Another interesting experiment that you see is in terms of the Maratha wall paintings or murals. So you see very interesting floral elements, again heavily influenced by from Islamic paintings, which are called columnist, that are seen in decoration of many of the vadas here. Apart from that, the figurative art that we see generally depict the Puranic scenes from various mythological stories. As you see here, you have Shiv Parvati, you have Durga, Ganesha is seen commonly. You see processions of different sardars sometimes. But mostly what you see is the human beings are not depicted, but the mythological themes are depicted. Even the romance, etc., is also depicted for the gods and goddesses. You don't see the living people being depicted in many of these paintings. One of the very characteristic identification for Maratha painting is when there is a woman wearing a 9 yard sari, that is seen in most of these paintings. So these are some of the paintings from Menavli again, with Maruti, Garud, and so on. Um this is we have a very beautiful book by B.K. Apte, which actually documents some of these paintings. Now most of these vadas are lost or burnt, and there are hardly like less than 10 different examples of these vadas existing today in Maharashtra. We even had this beautiful paintings on Shanivar Vada. This is from Shanivar Vada, but because of a governor's visit, people decided to whitewash it, and we have lost it. So we actually had a Ganesha here, and below there was a Sheshashai Vishnu and many beautiful elements painted here, which are now lost. I would also like to show you this very interesting assembly here. If you go to Vai near where there is a Krishna river, they host an festival for Krishna Maicha Utsav, which is a river festival every February, and every ghat actually erects this kind of makhar or the decoration. The makhar is what we call even for the Ganpati decoration. That decoration in Marathi is called makhar. So that sort of makhar, which is made up of paper and which is painted over by miniature paintings of different gods and goddesses and floral patterns, is erected to venerate the goddess here. So that is seen here. Here they have also utilized many Raja Ravi Parma paintings, which are of later period. But these makhars are a rare phenomena, and few collectors in Maharashtra still hold them. And the one of the ghats in Vai actually puts up the original ones, as you see in this picture. When we come to the miniature paintings apart from the wall paintings that we have seen, we see the portraits of many political figures. If you ask me, even in early medieval times, we do not get the personal portraits of many eminent personalities. We did not know how the Ramchandra Yadav looked like, but from the advent of 17th century, we see a depiction of many political personalities in the form of miniature art. And here, one of the earliest painting that we have come across is this Lakhuji Jadhav, who is the father of Jizabai and grandfather of Shivaji Maharaj, that is depicted here. Similarly, we have Sambhaji Maharaj depicted in this miniature painting. And apart from that, we have other mythical themes like Vishnu, as seen here. There is a procession of Ganesha, which is in progress. And many of the early medieval concepts of different Nayikas, like the one here is seen with a yeah, playing with a ball, is seen here. So these kind of paintings are seen in many miniatures during that time. This is the painting I just showed. This was one found in the Devghar of one of the Sardars. which is a contemporary painting of first Bajirao. We also see the glass paintings such as these. This is currently in the museum, Raja Kelkar Museum in Pune. And this glass painting has been identified by some experts as a painting of Mastani, but we are not sure about that. But we see such depictions during those times. The patrons who actually patronized this art and architecture have tried to put in various photographs of them. So first we did talk about Balaji Bajirao, who was the maker of medieval Pune. Here we have Nana Fadnis, who has been one of the Renaissance man for Marathas, wise person as well. He was one of the Sade Teen Shahane, the wise people of Maratha kingdom, as they say. We had the later Peshwas, especially the Narayana Peshwas or second Bajirao, Savai Madhavrao, who have been patronizing many of the art during later part of 18th century, and the Ahilyabai Holkar and Maharji Shinde and his descendants also figure prominently in the works that are taken up during those times as royal patrons. The artists who we see, these are some of the native works of native artists that we see. So this person here is called Gangaram Tambat Navgire, who was a court painter of Marathas. And similarly, we had some painters coming from Rajasthan and settling in courts of Pune, who were experimenting with the different kind of drawing. So uh, e- they initially practiced miniature Maratha miniature art, but with the influence of the British colonial people, we see them experimenting and also dabbling in some bit of the colonial art. And we also see that they are experimenting with subjects. So, apart from the royal subjects and the mythical subjects that you see on the temples, you see them drawing things like this rhino from the Shikar Khana of Peshwas. Here is an ostrich which is commissioned by Nana Fadnis. They are drawing the paintings of everyday life in Pune. We have these mallas exercising in Pune in Vyayamshalas. We have a painting of landscape of Parvati here. Similarly, we see them traveling with the British artists to various places like Kanheri, to Elephanta, to Ellora, documenting temples, documenting caves, and they're also making the portraits of their own contemporaries. Like here, you see uh, his guru has been depicted here, but he is also making paintings of the street people, the beggar, sannyasi, and so on. So here we actually see the modernity kind of peeping into the works of these artists, where they are looking at things beyond the obvious mythical paintings, and they're also experimenting with the techniques, the colors, the shading, which is absent in medieval paintings, and they're also trying to utilize the perspective drawing in many of these paintings. So some of the European influences can be seen in these kind of collected works. So this was basically patronized by James Mallet, who was the English resident at Pune, and he provided the painters to Peshwas, and those painters and Gangaram Tambat have made many of these paintings. So Charles Wallace was one of the painters who had depicted the young Savai Madhavrao here and the Peshwa court and so on. Here we have a painting of a mistress of a British officer, and these are the kind of court scenes that are painted. Here you have seen the Ganesh Mahal of Peshwas, and here there's a treaty going on between the French and British and Marathas. And here you can see how people are seated, how the pillars are made, how the curtains are hanged, how different mythical images are portrayed here, and so on. Now, this painting was again work of 4 5 different artists. Some part of it was completed in Pune, while some was completed in Europe in later times. The original here of this is in England today. Uh, if we come down to urban town planning, we see this particular unit of pates in many area. Now, pate kind of urban units are also found in urban areas in Bangalore and elsewhere. So these are the administrative units of city in pre-British times. And in while taking example of Pune, I would like to talk about the 18 pates of Pune. So these pates of Pune were self-sufficient units, and we had a particular community which is called Shete Mahajan, who are like the contractors, and these pates were established as a town planning scheme. So that person was given that contract of establishing a pate, and he was supposed to have the residential places, shopping complexes, artisan manufactories, etc., intercepted with other social spaces such as temples, shrines, parks, and a police post, and Saudi, and gardens, and so on. So they would have things which are for your livelihood, things for leisure, things for your religious purpose, and things for the political needs, and so on. So they would also have uh, supply of water in the form of house. These are the public tanks. I'll be showing some of the images in my later slides. And the scale of this architecture of Pates was very low. It was 1 or 2 storied, maximum 3 storied, with narrow streets for pedestrian and the bullock traffic. So I've just given the list of the different pates which are named after the different days of the week, and they had been renovated during Peshwa times at certain intervals, and the names which were initially more Arabic sounding or the Farsi sounding names were changed to more Marathi sounding names as well. We have lot of data on this, and we have also census of those times. One of the earliest census of Pune goes back to 1760s, when Nizam actually burned down Pune. After that, we see that even the cattle population has been documented, and so on. These pates are essentially consisting of various lanes, which are called aris, gullies, bole. So, and they are designated to certain livelihood and occupational groups, and these are caste based groups. Like we have Tapkir Gully, we have Fani Gully, which is comb related street. We have Cholkhan Ali, which would sell blouses. We have Shimpi Ali, which is the tailor street. Burud Ali is a bamboo street. Tambat Ali is a coppersmith street, and so on. And the architecture of those gullies and the lanes would be based on the functional requirement of that particular occupation. Like for example, if a coppersmith wants to have a area to shape the vehicle, the vessels, then we will have to keep that space for shaping the vessels, to washing the vessels, to having the furnaces in your front yard, and so on. So these kind of spaces were marked. This is just a map of the how Pune from this center kind of grows all next to the river, and it increases, and you see that the pattern doesn't have a grid like pattern like any western city. Here we see it is responding mainly to the physical feature of the land, whether if you have any stream cutting it through, whether you have a hillock, it will take into consideration that, and accordingly we will have more sort of organic growth, and the streets would not cut at right angles in a grid like pattern. So these are some of the diagrams from city survey, where you can see the central courtyards in many of the buildings here. I'll just fast forward a bit because we have already passed the time. I would like to talk about Maratha temple architecture a bit, because we see that from 13th century onwards to around 16th, 17th century, there is a break in the temple building activity, and we see very few examples of temples in this centuries between. But the revival actually happens in end of 17th and 18th century, And for this revival, we see that the Marathas are employing the Indo-Islamic or Indo-Sarsanic architecture with minarets, domes, jalis. They're also trying to revive the Yadava style of architecture, and they are gathering a lot of influences from Rajasthan and Gujarat and even Uttar Pradesh. They actually got the exposure of northern India because of the war of Panipat. Many of the people actually traveled during those times and brought in different ideas, and that are then fused with the local material work and executed here, as we see. Very few of the southern parts of Maharashtra employ the Dravidian Vimana or Gopura like styles in the work. And we'll just look at some of the expressions uh, uh, through the photographs that I will be showing. So let's not get into the details of it, but this is the essential dry masonry spire of an Yadava period temple, where it is trying to replicate the miniature forms of shikharas on it. And this idea is kind of taken in by Marathas, but they have lost the art of making a dry masonry super spire structure. So you see that when they are initially trying, they are heavily borrowing from the Indo-Islamic style of architecture, where they are integrating the domes and minarets in the architecture, as you see in the temple at Bhuleshwar here. One would find it difficult to sometimes distinguish between a masjid or a maqbara and a temple, but they are basically capitalizing on the building technique, which allows them to use a lighter material on the top and allow for a better structural integrity of the structure. Similarly, we see that the temple built by Shivaji Maharaj at Raigad in 17th century is also very much influenced and follows the plan of a masjid here. We see that they also borrow a lot from this chhatris which come from Rajasthan, the vaulted roof pattern with a dome, and again the cypress pillars and so on. The cusp arch is seen here, and that leads to this formation of these kind of miniature Maratha court. Now, Maratha court is an innovation where they combine the Yadava layout with a miniature form of a vaulted roof pattern that we just saw in this thing. And with this, they kind of make these kind of temples, which from far may look like a Yadava temple, but actually is a Peshwa period temple or 18th century temple, with this Maratha kutas, making layers of Maratha kutas, and which kind of symbolizes different floors or stories, and which is topped by a onion shaped dome here, fluted onion shaped dome. Here are certain some other examples of the same kind of architecture seen. Here again you see small minarets and the Maratha kutas employed. Here again, this particular temple actually has a plan of masjid itself, which was built by younger brother of Bajirao. Here are some other examples from Parvati. And later, they kind of try to make it into more conical forms, going vertically, growing vertically, to resemble more of the temple rather than a Islamic domical like structure. You can see different combinations in a place like this at Mahuli. This is Omkareshwar. I'll just go ahead a bit. And we also see very interesting experimentation done by Ahilyabai Holkar at places like Maheshwar, Indore, and so on, where she's also again trying to revive the styles. But there, because of good workmanship in Madhya Pradesh and the influence of Parmaras, we see she resorting to more North Indian kind of construction and trying to revive the Bhumija and the Nagara styles in many of her works. But again, the samadhis or the memorial temples are again employing many of the domes as seen in this Maheshwar Ghats here. And in later period, at the fag end of Maratha Empire, you see this particular chhatri construction in the memory of Maharji Shinde, one of the commanders of Marathas, which actually combines a Victorian style structure with a Indian temple, as seen here, Indian revivalistic temple, I would say. But again, using the so you can see this is a Shinde chhatri at Pune, which kind of combines all the three elements of the Yadava style Bhumi Nagara. Then you have Indo-Islamic domes, and then you have this architecture which is influenced by the colonial architecture, neo-Gothic kind of things here, as seen. Here are some details. Now I'll be talking a bit about sculptures. We see that many of the Puranas and the text were known to the people, but the how to the compositions and the actual workmanship was absent. So we see that 18th century artisans are interpreting lot of architecture, and here we see influences coming from all over the place. So here we have those Rajasthani chhatris. We have a depiction of British soldiers and a rhino here. We have pillars which are more Solanki kind of pillars with Ghata Pallava and so on. So here you see like fusion of all the two three styles, and lot of North Indian faces are seen in the sculpture again. Here you can see the Gaja Lakshmi. Now this temple, though because it is executed in stone, looks very old. It was actually built in 1780s, which is pretty late, and it was built by sect of Giri Gosavi sect, which is a Dashanami sect. And this is one of the later period temples in Pune. Similarly, you can see the faces of sculptures changing. Here you can see very delicate features coming for a river goddess of Vai here. You can see the depiction of a Pathare Prabhu couple here. All the masks of Shiva, they are adorned with the mustache, very strong looking, very warrior like faces are seen. Similarly, you can see the compositions are again using very novel sort of ideas to depict like 10 hands of Ravanas here. This is a temple in Kaigao, Toke, in Nagar, where it is trying to show the hands of like one single arm is shown, and from that the 10 arms are being shown coming out of it. It is a very different kind of composition is shown in this. Similarly, we see the depiction of the 9 yard sari ladies. We see depiction of the costumes of 17th, 18th century Marathas here, with Puneri pagdi and so on. The caste connotations are also sometimes seen. See, here we see a British man dancing with an Indian courtesan. This is from Maheshwar again. The stucco work that is seen in many of the Maratha kutas are also quite interesting. Here there is a lady with a child. We have a mendicant here. We have a noble person here, and so on. So apart from the religious themes, we have the profane and secular themes also depicted. These are other different artifacts of those times where the day-to-day life artifacts are decorated, ornamented to a great degree. Many of these collections can be witnessed at Raja Kelkar Museum, where you can see the everyday life being very beautifully decorated. I come to the last part of my presentation, where I talk about the riverfront development and water management. So, taking inspiration from Neher of Middle East, we see that the water is being harnessed with using the Nala Yojana, like a Kanat system. And even for Pune, we see that the two dams were built in the hills, and from there, underground stream was brought in the present natural stream was diverted, and that led to the Katras Nar Yojana, which provided the water for the growing Pune. I always say that Pune is a function of water. The development of Pune is a function of water. So more water you provide, more development of pets are seen. So right through the spine of the Pune pets, you see this stream which was diverted from here to this place, and it was dammed here, and then they built a artificial sort of underground neher to provide waters to the vadas that were on the way, and even the public tanks we talked about were provided water with. So this is a work done by one of my friend, Dr. Pallavi Gokhale, who has mapped this route in 3D, and how the water was provided. And interestingly, this system is still functional in parts in Pune and provides water to Vadas even today. This thing was commissioned by Nana Sahib Peshwa, and it was later supplemented by Nana Fadnis building his own duct, and Raste, another prominent Sardars building their own duct. So that in together kind of provided water for growing Pune, and this kind of approach to our waters was changed when we have British coming in and building dams like Khadakwasla in Pune. So we also see that someone like Nana Fadnis is influenced by the ghats of Banaras in Kashi, and he commissions these kind of beautiful paintings with holes to lit diyas. So you can place a diya in the background, and you can actually illuminate a painting. And he has commissioned these beautiful paintings, miniatures from Banaras, and he was so taken by this idea that he actually built such ghats in the heartland of Maharashtra. If you go to a place called Medavli, which is his hometown, he has built these kind of temples and ghats and his royal mansion next to it, called Medavlicha Vada on the river Krishna. You can see very elaborate sort of ghats are built. Similar ghat building activity was taken up by Ahilabai Holkar at various pilgrim sites, and which still survive to a great degree. These are the ghats of why we have more than 7 8 different ghats, and the entire Wai town is a pilgrim town, which is intercepted with this beautiful temples of different deities and so on, essentially during Peshwa times. We also see these kind of structures which are this is a structure which is extant today, it is not present. It's called Khajina Vihir. Now in normal terms, Khajina means treasure to us, but here the water is itself called as Khajina, and this public tank was built in this form, and which would provide water to both domestic purpose and as well as for drinking purpose. Similarly, many wells are seen in and around Pune. There are these kind of Khajinaveer and houds are even mark the pet area of Pune today. I'll just go ahead and I come to the last slide, that today, because the structures are not as palatial as many of the Rajasthan palaces and Havelis, they are very ill kept, and the restoration actually needs lot of knowledge of the craftsmanship of those times and use of material of lime, wood, and brick. And thankfully today I see that many conservation architects are really taking this up to make sure that they are restored in with the utmost integrity. But still many of the structures lack the support and the recognition that they should have. um, I see that the revival of this craft and traditional material can really give a new life to this last remaining material manifestations of Maratha art and architecture. With this, I finish my presentation, and I'm really sorry that I there were some initial hiccups in my presentation before, and I extended the time. I don't know whether we have any time for any questions answer, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing and very comprehensive appreciation of the Maratha art and architecture, something that we probably did not consider earlier as calling it, as a entire art area rather than just calling it, like you said, native art. So, a couple of questions, and I think we can run through them very quickly because we are
Mm-hmm.
time. For one, I have to say that, I got my first primary understanding of all the surnames, and you put them all together so well and in such good classification. So, thank you very much for that. Um, as I understand, it's not vernacular because it was not dynamic. It was dynamic in changing and evolving. Is that what you meant?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. A lot to learn. Sabira says that Loga, I think lots of people have mentioned
Yes.
trekking
Mm,
on Loga. That's a favorite for me. So thank you for sharing that. In some places, you've shown painted, painted over
gateways.
gates.
Uh,
Now, and this is, of course, something that you see very prominently in the South as well, where the temples are very prominently colored and painted. But is this a new phenomenon over the last 100 years, or is it a traditional?
no, so, some of the paintings that I showed, especially in niches and Maratha kutas, were the original paintings.
Yeah, that I agree with.
That, but the gateways that you see, they are not as profusely painted
Yes.
as you see. Those are the present day modern paints, oil paints and on, which are pretty garish actually.
Why did they use,
Hmm.
it is strange, isn't it, that we are surrounded by places which use a lot of other material. How come wood was used so prominently?
Um, I think it was more malleable in terms of sculptural execution. Working with stone was difficult. Basalt is a very difficult stone to work with, unlike a sandstone. So I think wood was used a lot, and we did have a lot of wood in forest and so on. And I think even today, if you go to a place like Konkan, the woodwork and the craftsmanship exist even in at the village level. Every village has a carpenter, and I actually see many of the, I couldn't show many temples from Konkan, but they are still kind of restoring it back to them and doing the regular maintenance using wood. So I think the art and the material, that thing exists. Only thing is, it is high maintenance. You need a lot of good oil and hay to make sure that the boring insects and carpenter bees don't destroy the thing.
And
Yes.
more vulnerable to
Uh,
fire, so we lose.
yes.
Uh, Jyoti's got a question that the buildings around the courtyard, building around a courtyard, was it
Mm.
something that was designed by the Marathas? Because you see it in the south as well. You see it both in Chettinad and again in Kerala, a central courtyard and the building around it. So,
I did not get your question. So you're asking buildings around courtyard. So
the
that kind of thing actually comes for the tropical India as such, especially the where there you have the hot belt from northern western frontiers down to Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, even till Kerala. I would say we have this courtyard modular structure, but the local and regional interpretation is different, and the usage is also different, is what I see. And in 18th century, I see a kind of flowering of that entire Vada architecture as seen here. So
Jyoti also says if you can name the Sade Teen Shani.
okay, there is one is Vitthal Sundar, then there is a Sakharam Bapu Bokil, and half is Nana Fadnis, and the third is another Vakil of some. I'm just forgetting the name, but I can just write it down and maybe send it to you. I can do that. Yes.
I'm really rushing through the questions.
And it is and Sade Teen is because the one who is wise and one who is brave makes you a complete Shahana. Nana Fadnis actually fell during the war of Panipat, and he injured his foot, so he was not as brave on field. Hence, he was called Ardha Shahana. So that's why he's the half Shahana. So,
Adit
so
had a question
what
with
else?
talk about the Fansana style of architecture that you mentioned.
Yeah, Famsana style actually does not exist in the medieval period. It is seen right from 7th, 8th century in Maharashtra. If you see, it's seen from 6th, 7th century onwards, but it's seen in different forms all throughout India. So mainly, it is a pyramidal kind of structure on stacked like a hut on top of each other, and you kind of reduce that space between the beams, and then you kind of cape it with a stone. So that kind of pyramidal structure is called fansana. I can actually send you some material on a fansana because my master thesis actually was on one of the fansana temples, and I'll be
Oh,
presenting a paper on fansana temples and how they are specifically utilized for memorial architecture.
oh,
So they are called Swargarohan Prasad. You can use them for like the noble people can attain the Swarga by building or being memorized in those kind of temples. So you see them built for many siddhas, noblemen, both in Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra. Even there is one example from, I think M. A. Khaki has given an example for Gujarat. So
maybe
we
we'll
see
come
that
back
certain.
and speak about them at some point in
Yeah,
time.
at some point of time we can look at that. I did not go in detail in terms of architecture because I wanted to give more a telescopic view rather than a
Yes, you've given
microscopic
such
view
a
of things.
great oversight of
It's a lot to talk about, and I know I have been like a bit partial with Pune because those example comes to mind, but I can assure you I can give equal examples for different districts in Maharashtra. There are equally good examples and spectacular examples from different parts.
you shared some beautiful pictures, and I think it sort of gives you a great perspective of, you probably we probably did not see them as a part of the art and architecture. Um, um, uh, I think this will be the last question. Of course, lots of compliments for you. Sarika says
Thank you, thanks, and thanks for bearing with me with my voice, which is really low. I wasn't keeping well, but I'm thankful that the participants stayed till the end. I was almost unsure that anybody would stay till the end. So,
no, no, it was very interesting.
thank
So
you.
I'll just give you the last question. That's from Monisha Kuldeep, who says, what is the nature and genesis of the connection between the Maratha aesthetics and the Rajasthani aesthetics in both in art, architecture, fabric, motifs, and all? How long back does it go?
I think it actually starts in 18th century. I don't see many exchange as such. Of course, the temple building that happened in early medieval period draws from Rajasthan and Madhya Desh
Mm.
with Shekhar, Shekhri and Bhumija and all those things. But the especially the sculpture art, the woodwork, and the painting styles, even the faces that you see of the people, everything that comes with the 18th century inflow. And I think I would say the under Marathas, many Hindu sects actually got lot of patronage in Maharashtra. You might have known there was a scholarship which was given by Peshwas, which is in a place called Ramana. So they used to give scholarship every year to more than 50,000 Brahmins. So all across India, people used to come and gather in Pune to receive those scholarships every year. So that also brought in inflow of many artists and many traders who settle here. So many of our pets are actually we have dominant populations of Rajasthani people, Ashapuri people, and Malwa people. So we have these concentrations in many of the pets, especially the trading pets of Maharashtra, of Pune. So I see that Nana Vasai Peshwa around 1960s he kind of initiated that thing a lot. In fact, I mean, I know many families, artisan families in and around this area coming from that times. So we actually do talk a lot about this in the walks we conduct in Pune. We show the Giri Gosavi temples. The temple which I showed is actually from a Rajasthani Dashanami sect Giri people. So they are now Marathi speaking and residing in Pune for more than 2.5 centuries now. So
So nice to see influencers come together and see their live examples. With
yeah.
that, thank you very, very much. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for joining us, even though you were not feeling very well. And thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll see you again here next Saturday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for being so patient and so receiving. Thank you. Thank you.